Ceiling plans are used to document the way that a ceiling or the light fixtures up above a certain height are represented. Inside of Revit, it's not underneath floor plans that we need to be looking, but we need to look underneath ceiling plans. And in this case, double-click on Level 1 to bring up what's technically called the reflected ceiling plan, looking straight up in Level 1. If we zoom out just a little bit, we'll see this building over here on the right-hand side. This is our little garage area that we have sort of out in the back of the building. This line going right down the middle is the peak or the gable there on the roof that's covering that garage. What we're seeing here in this view is that currently there are no ceilings in place. Those still need to be drawn. But this wide area is actually the underside of the floor for the level up above. So that we have a better idea as to what it is that we're looking at when we're looking at a ceiling plan. Come underneath Properties, scroll down, and toward the bottom of the Properties list, there'll be an option there called View Range. Select on the Edit button next to View Range. We'll see a Primary Range option, and we'll see a cut plane as well as a top plane. Right now, it says that 7'6" off of Level 1 is where we're cutting through the floor plan at. So imagine if your head was at 7'6" up in the air and you were looking straight up. That's exactly what's happening here. Then the top is Level 2 above, 0 feet 0 inches. So at exactly Level 2, that's as far up as we can see. If we wanted to see beyond or be able to see up higher than Level 2, we could either change this information here, or we could select another level that was even higher up on the list. If we wanted to be able to see below where the cut plane is at, we could change this offset distance so it was a smaller number, and then we'd be able to see further down and be able to catch more things which might be lower than the cut plane. So the reflected ceiling plan, or just called ceiling plan, if I click on OK, is looking up as opposed to looking down like you'd have in a floor plan view. In this video, we're going to learn how to place ceilings in our reflected ceiling plan views. To do this, of course, we need to be inside of a reflected ceiling plan. Make sure that underneath the project browser that you're currently underneath Level 1 ceiling plans. Probably the most common mistake is if someone tries to place a ceiling and they do it inside of a floor plan by accident. Because initially, they look almost identical. Well, if you try to do that, it will place the ceiling in, but you won't be able to see it. What happens is it'll show up on the reflected ceiling plan because in the ceiling plan, you're looking up. But the reason why you can't see it in the floor plan views is because in floor plan views, you're looking down. So always place your ceilings initially inside of a ceiling plan view. Now, we're going to place a ceiling inside of this office area between A and B. To do that, we need to come underneath the Architecture tab and select on Ceiling. When we do, we need to look underneath Properties to see which type of ceiling it's going to place inside of the space. In this case, it's a 2x4 ACT acoustical tile system ceiling. Also, we can see the height, and in this case, it's 8 foot. So if we place it in here currently, it'll be 8 foot off of Level 1, or 8 foot off of the ground. In this case, I'd like it to be at least a little bit higher than 8 foot off of the ground. So I'm going to type in 9 foot, and we'll have a 9-foot ceiling inside of this office space. Now, if you move your cursor into this area, you'll see a red line showing up around the office walls. This is a good thing. This is where it's going to try to place the ceiling into. Up here, you'll see this says Automatic Ceiling. What's actually going on here is that it's finding where those outside walls are at, and it's automatically placing this ceiling inside of this space. So it's making this decision for you. Do you want to place it inside of this space, or inside of this space, or inside of this space? In this case, yes, we want to place it inside of the office area, and by just clicking, we've now placed a 9-foot elevation acoustical tile system inside of the room. Now I'm going to do the same thing, except over in these two spaces here. But these are going to be restrooms, and frankly, I don't really want to have ACT inside of my restrooms. I want a different kind of material. So I'm going to pick this gypboard material, the GWB on metal stud. And I'm going to change the height offset from being 9 foot to 8'6". So we'll have a little bit lower ceilings inside of here. Now just click to place and do one more time over in the next restroom. Initially it looks like nothing has happened, but that's because in Revit, by default, and this can be changed, the gypboard ceilings don't have a pattern associated with them. Now it can be assigned any pattern that you want it to have, so it looks like a bunch of little dots or maybe triangles or something along those lines. But that being said though, in order to see if these ceilings actually were placed, one trick is to move down here, highlight over visual style, and then change the visual style to be shaded. When you do, you should see this get a lot darker where that ceiling is going to be placed at. As a result of this, you know that you're going to have ceiling inside of both of those spaces. Next, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select on yet a different type of ceiling. I could do the generic, or in this case, I think I'm just going to pick on this 2x2 ACT system. And I'd really like to place it inside of this room, but I can see that I'm going to have a problem. I only want it inside of this space right here, not have it fill up this entire space out here. So to accomplish that, I'm going to have to sketch my ceiling in. So I'm going to come up here to Sketch and select on Sketch. Then I'm going to pick my Draw tools and use my line work to draw around where I want the boundary for my ceiling to be. One quick tip, if you move over here, just highlight over the intersection and move out, you'll get this dashed line. When you do that, you know that you're straight across from that wall. Move across, click, come back up, and click again. Now at the 8'6" height, I'm going to have this 2x2 tile put in here, and click the big green check mark to finish that off. I'm going to click out here in the white area, and now we can see we have ceiling in each of these spots. Now I'd like to go through the same process one more time, except in this case, I'm going to put a ceiling in this spot here, and I do want it to be gypboard again. Going to do one more ceiling. Going to choose the GWB, the gypsum wallboard ceiling. And one thing of interest, you can see if I click right now, it's going to put a ceiling right into this space. The problem is it'll try to cover up this ceiling here. But really I have one of two different options. I can either use sketch ceiling and take the time to pick each and every one of these walls, or to speed things up, choose the automatic ceiling, accept this height offset, 8'6" sounds good to me right now. Click right inside of the space. We can see this is all turned gray. But even though this pattern hasn't changed, I can tell you that there's actually two ceilings inside of this space. I'm going to hit Escape right now. Now I'm going to put my mouse over the edge of where I know a corner of the ceiling is at. And I'm going to select on the Tab key to try to select my different ceilings. Now in this case, actually my ceiling is coming in here, so I need to pick a different edge. I'm going to pick the edge right here. I'm going to click the Tab key until just that ceiling highlights. And you can see that in the lower left-hand side of the screen, it'll say Ceilings, Compound Ceilings on the gray bar going across the bottom. When you click, it'll highlight. You can then do an edit boundary to this. And at this point, it gets easy. Because all you need to do is use your Draw tools, pick a line, and draw one line over. Hit Escape a couple of times. Highlight on each of these lines. Click the Delete key to get rid of these extra lines. And with this final line, you can select on it, click the dot, and pull it straight down, and click the big green check mark whenever you're done. When you do that, you'll then have a ceiling just in those areas. And even though that seemed like it was a lot of clicks, it was a lot less than clicking each and every spot going all the way around the room until you went all the way around in a circle. Now we have a ceiling in each of these areas. And we'll be able to see that, particularly over here, if we double click on this circular area here, which is a section going through our space. This is a section. I'm going to click right here on the visual styles and turn this to shaded. And here's that ceiling, and here's the floor up above, and we can see the space in between those areas. And we can see that ceiling going all the way across in our building. May they be walls or floors or roofs, many things inside of Revit are made up of multiple layers of materials. To take a look at how a ceiling is put together, let's zoom in here on our reflected ceiling plan view. In this case, it's a reflected ceiling plan view for level 1. Click on one of the individual lines that makes up the ceiling tile. Now go over to Properties and select Edit Type. You can then select on Edit next to the word Structure. This is going to show each of the layers of material that make up this particular ceiling. The structure is 1 5/8 inches thick, and the finished material is an acoustical ceiling material that's 5/8 of an inch thick. If we change the thicknesses here, it would change the actual thicknesses of how the ceiling is modeled. We can find the total thickness up here as it adds these dimensions together. Now I'm going to select on OK and OK to get out of this particular dialog box. And instead, I'm going to move my cursor over and I'm going to hit the Tab key right here and continue to click on Tab until I can select this individual ceiling that's here inside of our restroom area. Now, once it's highlighted, it has the blue line going around it. Click the highlight it and select on Edit Type. Come up to Edit next to Structure, and we can see 3 5/8 inch metal stud layer for the structure and gypsum wallboard of 5/8 inch thickness, as well as the total thickness showing up here. If we wanted to add an extra layer of material, we could click the Insert button. If we wanted to delete a layer of material, we could highlight it. And I'm not going to actually click it, but we could hit the Delete button to get rid of the extra layer of material. If we want to put it in a different order, we could click either up or down to move it up or down on the list. In this case, the gypsum wallboard doesn't have an actual material finish showing up for it. It's showing up in gray, but it doesn't have little dots indicating that this is a gypboard ceiling. And I'd like to give that to it. I'm going to select on where it has gypsum wall and click the little button right next to it. And this will bring up the material browser. We can see gypsum wallboard is highlighted. There's a cut pattern that looks like sand, but I'd really like a surface pattern that looks like sand too. So where it has pattern and none, click inside of that box and then try to find a sand pattern. So that it shows up really nice, I'm going to pick sand dense. Click on OK. Now it's going to display this pattern, and the pattern is going to be black, like the little dots show up here, because the color here is black. Now, click on OK. Click on OK again, and OK. It's a little hard to see, but we can start to see those speckles showing up there on the ceiling. And if we move down to the bottom and choose Hidden Line, we can see little gray or black speckles all throughout these locations where we have a gypboard ceiling in place. So to modify the materials that might be associated with our ceilings, simply either select on the ceiling or activate the ceiling command, come into Edit Type. I'm going to pick on Edit Structure, and from here you can add, subtract materials, as well as change their thicknesses. Also, you can adjust what it is they actually do, so you could tell it your structural or your finished material, all through the Edit Assembly dialog box. Lights are objects that can be placed onto your ceilings and then put in position onto your ceiling grids. To place a light fixture, you need to come underneath the Architecture tab, and you'll notice that there are no light tools showing up here. To place a light, you need to come underneath your components. Here on the Type Selector list, you'll be able to click and see if there are any lights loaded into your project. We're going to need to load in some lights into our project environment. Select on Load Family on the ribbon. It should take you to whatever your default directory is. In most cases, it's going to be the US Imperial Directory. And we're going to be looking for lighting. Double-click to open up lighting. From here, it's broken up into two individual categories. There's going to be architectural and then MEP. The only difference really between architectural and MEP is that MEP has little connectors associated with it that allow you to connect wire to them. So if you want to take it back to your circuit, you can. If you're doing architectural work though, you're best served to just open up the architectural environment. You'll see external lights versus internal lights. This is inside of a building, so we're going to do internal. Here we see a variety of different lights, and if we highlight on one, and if you pick the down arrow on your keyboard, you'll be able to scroll through all these different variations of lights that come with the Revit software. Now, the one that I want to pick is going to be this Troffer Light 2x4 parabolic. Select on Open to that. Then move your mouse over into the area where we can place this light in. What these lights will try to do is they'll try to place themselves automatically along this ceiling. Depending on what kind of light family it is, and that's what these are called, or families, some will like to be placed along the surface of a ceiling. Others will like to be embedded into the ceiling. and it just comes down to what type of light they are and what it is that they're supposed to do. One thing that you'll notice is that this light fixture is right on the center of where my cursor is at. Unfortunately, that makes it pretty much impossible for me to snap to any spot along the grid. So to place this, my own trick is to come in the general area where you want it to be. In this case, I'm going to put the light right inside of this square that I'm circling myself around. But since I can't click on an intersection to place it very easily, I'm just going to click once right here. And I'm going to hit escape a couple of times to get out of the insertion command. Now, select on that light fixture, right on the edge will work, and come up here to this command here. It's called the rotate command. For the angle, we're going to type in 90. We're going to rotate it around 90 degrees. Then click the enter key on the keyboard. See how it spun it around 90 degrees at that time? Once the light has been highlighted and rotated around, come up here and select on not the rotate command, but on the move command now. When you pick on move, you can pick an intersection, in this case, the corner of that light fixture, and you'll also be able to move over and pick the intersection of where those two lines come together. And as a result of that, if you hit escape a couple of times, you'll now be able to place that light fixture directly on the ceiling grid where it belongs. If they happen to not be lined up exactly where you want them to be, if you select on one of the individual lines, you can either use the move command to move the grid over, or you can even use the arrow keys on your keyboard to nudge it over, and you'll notice that your light fixtures will follow that particular ceiling grid, no matter if you nudge it up or you nudge it back down again. In this example, we have a light placed inside of one of our rooms. Now, once that light has already been placed, we have a couple of different options. Obviously, we want to have more lights than just this one inside of this room. So, in order to put multiple lights, we can either do the copy command or we can do the array command. To do copy, all you need to do is select on one of the lights. Move up to the little copy icon up at the top of the screen, select on it. If you want to do more than one copy, put a check mark here in multiple. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Now I'm going to make some copies going over in this direction. To start, I'm going to pick the intersection of where this light hits these lines. Now I'm going to make two copies, one to here, and then another one there. And technically I could continue this copy process on, so I could just keep going click, click, click at each intersection to drop them in. But another option that I have is to use the array command instead. I just hit escape a couple of times to get out of the command. I'm going to zoom further back in. And now I'm going to do what's considered a window around each of these three fixtures. Move your mouse to right about where my cursor is at, click, hold the mouse button down, and drag a window around those three fixtures until they highlight in blue. Then let go of your mouse. When you've done that, you'll have your three different light fixtures all highlighted. Move up here to the array command. When you pick on array, there's a couple of different options that you have. One is a radial array, but the kind that you want to do is a linear array, which instead of a curve, it'll do a straight line. So make sure that linear is highlighted. Come over here. How many do we want in the array? We want to have a grand total of 3 in this array. There's two options, second or last. And either one of these in this case could actually work. Second means it's going to space them the same distance apart as between the first spot that you click and the second spot that you click. If we did last, it would evenly array them between the first spot that you clicked and then the second spot that you click. So it would space them the exact same distance apart. In this case, though, I always like to use second if I can. I'm going to pick this intersection right here, move down, and then pick this intersection here. And we can see it's now arrayed them down in this direction. How many do we want in the array? I'll point out that if we change this to 2 and then clicked out in the space, it would only do 2. If we clicked back on the 2 again and changed that to 3, it'll now do 3. So we have a fair amount of control over this array, and it allows us to copy more than one simultaneously. So the different ways that you can copy or have multiple light fixtures inside of your design would be to either select on one of these individually and then use the copy command And in this case, since we select all of these and did an array on it, I'll need to hit the Tab key to select on this light. Then when I do, I can select on the copy command and copy it. Or you could use the array command, which is select on as many as you'd like, and then select array and tell it how many rows of lights you'd like to have. One last thing to know is that whenever you use the array command, there's a good chance that they'll all be grouped together. That's the reason why we were able to click on the number 2 or the number 3 and have them all move in unison, is because they were all grouped together like that. It's always best if you decide to do an array to ungroup them whenever you're done. So you know that you have the right amount of rows. So select on those groups, and you can hold down the control key to select on multiple ones, and then come up here to ungroup each one of these. And you can now see as I highlight over it, they're no longer highlighting over all 3 of them at the same time. They're now individual light fixtures again, no longer grouped.